Hi, this is Dr. Nicholas Kyasima, and in this video I'm going to talk about the top 5 most famous court cases in the United Kingdom, starting off with case number 5, Tulk vs. Moxhay, 1848. The case regards restrictive covenants. All matters regarding restrictive covenants can be found in land law in year 3 on the law degree. This case is the reason why Leicester Square in London exists today. It was established that whoever owns the land now or in the future shall not build over Leicester Square garden. Thus, a restrictive covenant to bind successors became a reality. I'm letting you know in writing as a notice that you cannot build upon that section of the land, and you have to continue using the land with that notice in mind. That's what this case establishes. So with that in place, that is a restriction, which is why it is called a restrictive covenant. So in land law, there's something called a restrictive covenant, and that's why this case is number 5 on the list. Case number 4 of the 5 most famous court cases in the United Kingdom is Donoghue versus Stevenson, 1932. The case is about a woman who goes to a bar, gets a drink, and once she gets the drink, she realizes there's a snail in the drink, and then she gets sick, seriously sick. She almost died. She takes the makers of the beer to court, and the makers of the beer say, were like, oh, you got the beer from the bar. Ask the barman why there was a snail in the beer. The victim then contended that the snail was in the beer before it was opened, so the manufacturers of the beer are the ones responsible. So that created a very famous case as a result, because there was a question, who is to blame? Do we blame the barman or do we blame the manufacturing company? Shouldn't the barman have seen that there was a snail in the beer? Shouldn't the manufacturer's company keep the beer clean to make sure that no snail can be in there and that the beer cannot make someone sick? So there were so many questions to ask, and keep in mind it was in 1932 when the law was not fully established as to when a contract is formed and with whom a contract is formed. The third most famous court case in the United Kingdom is Carlill versus Carbolic Smoke Ball Company, 1892. And I have seen this court case in contract law during my law degree. So that's a very famous case there, Carbolic Smoke Ball, where the advert in the newspaper led to some form of binding agreement between the maker of the advert and the person who then executes a task based on what they saw in the advert. Okay, so advertisers beware. If you promise something, you have to execute what you're promising. That's what that case is about, and that's why it's a very famous case in the United Kingdom. Once again, the name of that case is Carlill versus Carbolic Smoke Ball, 1892. Case number 2 of the most famous cases in UK history is the case of conjoined twins, 2001. Okay, now this case regards 2 children that are born attached to each other, and the doctors had a choice to make. The 2 kids stuck together, sharing vital organs. If one child is killed, the other has a big chance of surviving. Okay, one had more advantage. However, if you kill one child, you will be guilty of taking a life, and that causes conflict. So they needed permission, the parents' permission, the court's permission, and the parents wanted to keep both children. And the doctors were serious that if you keep both children, then both children will die in a very short time after their birth. However, if you take one away, then the other has a chance of surviving. So because the doctors and the parents were at a conflict, they decided to delegate the decision to the courts. Okay, once again, the name of that case is conjoined twins, 2001, where they had to decide of the babies born joined together which had to die in order to save a life. Okay, if they were both together, then they will both die shortly. However, if one were removed, then the other would have a high chance of surviving and living like a normal person. So that's pretty much serious stuff, which is why that is the second most famous case in the United Kingdom. And now, the moment you've been waiting for. The number 1 most famous court case in the United Kingdom is, drum roll please. And the number 1 most famous court case in the United Kingdom is RVR 1991. The case regards rape, Criminal offense where a man was found guilty of raping his own wife. Impossible, you may think. Once a man's married, he cannot be guilty of raping his own wife. That's impossible. But actually, it did happen. And it happened in this court case. Consider yourself intelligent. You are now aware of the top 5 most famous court cases in the United Kingdom. I am Dr. Nicholas Kyasima, and thanks for watching.